All right, so for this first question, y varies directly with x, you'll use the relationship y is equal to k times x, because directly means multiply. So we'll plug in, we'll first look for k. So we'll plug in 45 for y, x for 5, and then to solve for k, we'll divide both sides by 5, and we'll get k is equal to 9. So then our equation will be y is equal to 9x. And so then lastly, we can use that equation to find y.
Acceleration is negative, velocity is positive, it's slowing down. That's it.
So we will plug in x equals 13, and 9 times 13 is 117. So the next one, the y varies inversely with x. So that means divide. So when you do y varies inversely with x, you're going to do y is equal to a constant divided by x. So we'll start by finding k. So we'll plug in y equals 12 and x equals 5. And now we'll multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of this 5. And we'll have k is equal to 60. So then for our equation, we're just taking this equation and plugging k back in. So we'll have y is equal to 60 divided by x. So then lastly, we'll find y when x is equal to 2. So we'll just plug that into our equation, and we'll get y is equal to 30. The next one has a combination. Y varies directly with x and inversely with the square of z. So what does this mean? Well, y varies directly with x means we have a constant times x, because directly means multiply, and inversely means with divide. So then we'll divide by the square of z. So then you'll use that to find k. So plug in y equals 20, x equals 50, z equals 5. And we'll get 20 is equal to k times 50 divided by 25. You can divide the 25 and the 50 first if you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and multiply both sides by 25. So we'll end up with 500 is equal to k times 50, and then I'll divide by 50. And we'll get k is equal to 10. So then lastly, we will write our equation. So we're going to take our equation over here, plug in k, and then we can use that equation to find y when x is 3 and z is 6. And that will be 30 divided by 36. And if you simplify that, you'll get 5/6. For number 4, it says y varies jointly with x and the square of w. So jointly means multiply by both of those things. So jointly with x and the square of w. So now we'll find k. So we'll plug in y equals 36 and x equals 3 and w equals 2. And we'll have 36 is equal to 3 times 4, which is 12. Divide by 12, and you get k is equal to 3. So then plugging that back into our equation, we have y is equal to 3xw squared. And then we can use that to find y when x is 6 and w is 4. So 3 times 6 times 4 squared will be 288. And last question of these kind, it says that y varies jointly with a and b and inversely with the square root of c. So we'll start with the jointly. Y varies jointly with a and b, so that's both times k. And then inversely means divide, so the square root of c is now going to be the square root of c. So then we'll plug in our values to find k. So y is 12, a is 3, b is 2, and c is 25. So then this will be 12 is equal to k times 6 over 5. I would go ahead and multiply by 5 first, but it doesn't really matter what order you do it in, as long as you don't do illegal math. We'll get 60 is equal to k times 6, divide by 6, and you get k is equal to 10. So then we'll take our equation, fill in k, and now we'll go ahead and find y when a is equal to 5, b is equal to 3, and c is equal to 9. So that'll be 150 on the top and 3 on the bottom. So that y will be 50. Okay, now we'll go ahead and do some distance formula and midpoint formulas. So for this problem here, to find the distance, we will do the square root. We'll subtract our x values, so 2 minus a negative 4 squared. So that's this part, and then we'll do the y value subtracted. Negative 2 minus 8 squared. So this will become 2 plus 4 squared plus negative 2 minus 8 squared. And so that will be 6 squared plus negative 10 squared. So that'll be 36 plus 100. So this is the square root of 136. Now, it did say to round to the nearest hundredth for this one, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to, the only one I want you to do that is number 9. Number 9, you can round to the nearest hundredth. But other than that, I want you to do the practice simplifying your radicals. So if we take the square root of 136, we're going to look through our list of perfect squares. So like 4, 9, 16, 25, and find a perfect square that divides 136. So if you use 136 divided by 4, that's 34, and 34 is only divisible by 2, so there's not going to be a bigger one. So 34 times 4 is 136, so we'll break this up into 4 times the square root of 34. So this will become 2, and the square root of 34 is not a nice number. So that's the end. So our answer here is 2 square root of 34. And then for the midpoint, you're now adding your x values together and your y values together and dividing by 2. So now we'll do -4 plus 2 divided by 2 and 8 plus -2 divided by 2. So we'll get -2 divided by 2 and 6 divided by 2, which will be -1, 3. So our midpoint is -1, 3. So over here for number 7, we'll start with our distance. So we'll do 7 minus a -2 squared. That's the x values. And 3 minus 5. It doesn't really matter the order in which you do it as long as you're subtracting the x and the y. You'll get the same answer. So this will turn into 7 plus 2 squared. 3 minus 5 is -2 squared. 7 plus 2 is 9. So this will be 9 squared plus -2 squared. So that'll be 81 plus 4. So that'll be 85. And 85 is divisible by 5. But let's see if it's divisible by 25. See if it's a perfect square. It's not divisible by 25. It's not divisible by 4. So this is already simplified. You cannot simplify that. So this will just be the square root of 85. So then we'll do our midpoint. There's no perfect squares that divide 85, so it's done. We'll add the x values together, divide by 2. And we'll get 5 divided by 2 and 8 divided by 2. So our final answer, you can write it as a decimal if you want. I'm going to write it as 5 divided by 2, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Come down here and do our distance formula here. So we'll do the square root of -2 minus 0 squared and -5 plus 3, because it'll be a double negative, be -5 minus -3. And so then you'll have -2 squared plus -2 squared. So you'll have 4 plus 4.
Someone's like, right now, I'm like, okay.
And then that'll be the square root of 8. So then if we simplify the square root of 8, we're looking for a perfect square divides 8. That'll be 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So it'll be 2 radical 2.
Like the first 14 digits.
And then for our midpoint, we'll add, divide by 2, add, divide by 2. So we'll get -2 divided by 2 and -8 divided by 2. So that will be -1, -4. And then this one is going to require the use of a calculator for sure. So we'll do the square root of -6.2 minus 4.7 squared plus 3.1 minus 1.9 squared. So this will be -10.9 squared plus 1.2 squared. So we'll go ahead and do all that in our calculator underneath the radical, since we have to use it anyway. So we'll do -10.9. Just make sure you put parentheses before you square. And you should get 120.25. Square root of 120.25 is 10.97, because it said round to the nearest hundredth.
So it's literally all I did wrong was take you absolutely what you became wrong. You're just taking what you absolutely got.
Alright, so very last we'll find our midpoint here.
What?
Adding, dividing by 2, and I'll go ahead and type that into my calculator. So negative 6.2 plus 4.7, divide that by 2, and you should get negative 0.75. And we'll do 3.1 plus 1.9, divide that by 2, and you'll get 2.5.